Right, good evening. I'll make that 6:30, so welcome to the final meeting for this calendar year of Community Environment and Partnerships. The usual announcements. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, therefore if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear and side of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park. Remembering, as you've doubtless discovered on the way in, you can't go down the main stairs, so you'll have to go down the stairs this end or the far end. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. As it is working. Good. Please can all members and the public switch their phones off or turn them to silent. Apologies for absence and substitutions. We have two substitutions, resignations and replacements for this evening. Councillor Mark Taylor apologises, and it's welcome back to Councillor Cousins. And we have apology from Councillor Hussey, who has been replaced by Councillor Michael Bound. You're almost a permanent member here, so welcome again. Any declarations of interest? No? Good. Anyone wish to be nominated as Vice Chairman?
Why
not? No? Good. Right. No, so not good, but... Yes. And there are no urgent matters. The minutes of the committee meeting held on the 14th of October are paper A. Is everybody content with them? Because if so, I'll sign them at the end. Okay, thank you. Right, now we have one substantive paper on here. The soft market testing of the Anvil and Haymarket theatres and the council's event service. But they are, although it's all labelled paper B, there are actually two papers there, so I am intending we take them one at a time. If there are points that are relevant to both, we'll find a way of dealing with that when we get to it. And I'm not assuming we have no public speakers, we just have interested observers in the gallery. Good. And we're also privileged to have two portfolio holders here, because I'm never quite sure which of them is doing which on this, but we have the portfolio holder for community service delivery and improvement and the portfolio holder for partnerships, and I think it's the former who's going to introduce this for us. Thank you.
So, Chair, which one do you want to start with? The Anvil, yeah?
Start with the Anvils, it's first,
okay,
yeah.
Fine. Okay, good evening, members and Chair. The paper in front of you is a summary of the soft market testing of the Anvil and Haymarket Theatre, which was run from the Commissioning Outcome Group from October 2014. And the exercise was based around how to develop the future market potential of these two venues and looking at the capabilities of them to be undertaken by other management apart from those which are in place, and what would be the future and how would that be developed with them. The paper covers the mechanics of how that was undertaken and the results of it. And the results of it were that we had a number of responses, of whom 5 were applicable of what you might call responses which would be serious in nature and would have experience to be able to undertake that type of work. The responses did lead us into a direction which ultimately we have decided to, at this stage, go forward with the Anvil and Haymarket's existing management. And reason for this is fundamentally some of the responses left us a little bit concerned about the risk in terms of long downturn risk of the ability to deliver the finance packages around them, particularly resulting around how food and drink and beverages would be taken into developing a profitable model for these particular areas. Now, that's one issue, is how to make this financially, how to improve the financial status. The second is how to develop the community and how to develop the arts portfolio. And the third part of this then is also looking at how maybe in the longer term we can change the model of delivery within the town altogether. The one side of the risk side of this is that we also have to be aware that the the Anvil Trust is highly regarded in the Arts Council in terms of the grant it maintains for the symphony concerts, and obviously bearing in mind the importance of that and the importance of that to the calendar of events, it was necessary to make sure that our risks were managed as we go through this process. Now, it would be wrong to say that the end result of this paper says we're going to continue dealing with where we are and there is no change. That isn't the outcome of this paper at all. What it says is that we have taken a decision from the responses of the soft market testing to look at our current structure and look at how that can be developed, and there will be and are ongoing discussions about how to do that. So it would be currently that's the outcome of the paper, which says that's the direction of travel, but I would not want it to be in any way seen that where we are is no change, everything moves on, and there was nothing that we got as a result of it. A lot of work has come out of this, which I think is good residual work for the future discussions, with Anvil Haymarket and the Anvil Trust, but also in the future direction. So it is a change, but a change with the existing structure, and we'll see how far that we can take this. So that's the summary of the paper for you.
Thank you very much. Now, we also have with us two officers tonight, Leslie Murphy and Summer Christian, so we can now have questions. We will, if we could try and do the questions as questions and the debate as debate, we will allow you plenty of time for debate. So questions on the Anvil Haymarket. But before we do that, I always like to remind you, the recommendation, which is on 9 of 54, is that we note and comment on the work done since the Cabinet decision, the summary of the soft market testing exercise, and the recommended next steps. And the recommended next steps are on page 14 of 54. So if we could particularly focus on what we're being asked to do, that would be good. But certainly any questions relevant to this paper. And I saw Councillor Cousins first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Portfolio Holder, for your summary. A couple of simple questions. Page 12 of 54, point 6.1, says the Council sought the advice of an external expert quartet. Could you tell me how much we paid them, please?
$4,500.
And finally, page 14 of 54, point 7.3. The Anvil Trust is confident that it can meet a reduction in council funding. How much of a reduction, please?
It's looking for a 27% reduction over a 5-year period.
And just very quickly, how much are they currently receiving, please?
Yeah, you've got 2017-18, 934k, from 1.035 in 2014-15.
Thank you. Nice, straightforward questions. Good. Any more questions? Okay. Well, just reminding us again what we're being asked to do. Note, and if we want to comment on the work done since the Cabinet decision and the summary of the soft market testing exercise, in particular the recommended next steps. So, any comments, please? Yes, Councillor Gardner.
I'd just like to say that I'm not surprised by the outcome from the soft market testing, and I welcome the steps that we're taking now going forward. I think it's actually going to keep the current management, which haven't done a particularly bad job of running the Anvil. We're certainly going to see some improvements after the consultation that's gone on, and we're going to see a bit more the local community benefiting, hopefully, from future performances. And we're going to see a continuation of the success that the Anvil's been in the benefit to the economy of the town generally.
are we, I suspect it's the other item we most want to talk about, but are we okay with, we support the next steps? Is that acceptable? The committee supports the next steps, and we've noted the work done, and we support the proposed next steps. So thank you. Right, so you're back on again with the events service.
Thank you, Chair. So the second paper is, again, soft market testing of the Council's events service and its results of the soft market testing. Again, soft market testing, we had a limited number of responses to the soft market testing, and I think what we learned from the exercise is that the portfolio as it's presented and the offering it as a potential external provider, there was a very limited response in terms of the desire to undertake that, and that we therefore had to review the direction to go ahead, which has been undertaken, and it currently continues to be reviewed. But I guess the straightforward question for this was that putting it into a public marketplace did not give us the encouragement that currently would be a route which would develop in the future, and therefore we're now looking at how this can be developed using the existing resources. Now, again, I'd be very careful with this in saying that that implies or says no change, because I think a number of things came out of this exercise which perhaps were slightly sideways to the immediate requirement of it, which was the going out to a market test. Now, I don't think it sort of says at the end of this that we have reached a position where it is as is. In fact, that's not the case at all. I think what has, again, opened up with this is stimulating discussion about the nature of events, how they integrate into a wider platform within Basingstoke and Deane, and also how those in the future can be delivered, both in a community and maybe in a commercial way. So I think what's come out of this is a positive dialogue for the future, and I hope that what we can build on that is building a wider range of community-based events. We can ensure what is clear that we're doing, that we are facilitating events within the borough, and build what I think can be a very ultimately quite an attractive portfolio, which builds on perhaps the commercial realities that we're looking at in areas like the top of town, how to build something that has a long-term viability for the community in general.
Thank you. The recommendation is on page 31 of 54. As with the previous paper, we're asked to note the work undertaken since the Cabinet decision, the summary of the soft market testing exercise, and the recommended next steps for the future. We're not explicitly asked to comment on this occasion, but I've assured the portfolio holders that we will doubtless want to comment. So don't let the absence of that word put you off. Free to comment. The actual next steps are on page 36 of 54, but we will take questions first. Councillor Cousins.
Thank you, Chair, and once again, thank you, portfolio holder, for your summary. Page 38 to 54, point 12.3 in the conclusion, exploring the long-term sustainability of the event, and this is specifically in relation to Basingstoke Live. Could you define long-term sustainability, please?
A definition of long-term and sustainability depends on an individual's view of what long-term is. First of all, the nature of Basingstoke Live is something that clearly has a lot of appreciation in the community. So the longevity of Basingstoke Live frankly depends on how that's viewed by the community. This is not something that I think that a portfolio holder or a councillor should tell you that's how long it will be. It is something that if it belongs to the community, as long as the community wants it and there's a reason for it and it's viable, and that's the second question, then the viability and the community desire will show how long that should go on for. As far as viability is concerned, I think it's clear that the question that needs to be asked, and I think it comes into this wider question that I alluded to in the initial sort of presentation of what this is that we have a funding model for Basingstoke Live which exists currently, and that has delivered an event that many people are very comfortable with. The question as to how that model can, first of all, the question is, should it be adapted, or could it be adapted, and how to adapt it? I think that's something which is now part of the wider picture of what it is that this portfolio of events can be in the future. Now, whether that's existing, what I'm trying to say is that nothing should stay the same forever. It should develop and grow, because that's what people will appreciate in the future. How depends on actually what people really want, and how we can use it and work with it to get both the desired outcome for communities and also potentially a better outcome in terms of reducing perhaps the levy on, if you like, the public purse, and how it can perhaps become more commercial to become more part of the festival, or how else we can use it. So I can't give you the straightforward answer that says, oh, it should be 10 years and it should be that, because I don't think that's the right way to go ahead. It should be something that is brought as a dialogue to say, this is a way forward. Is it appreciated? And whilst it is, then it should be very much continued.
Do you want to supplement? I'm sure there'll be some debate on that, but do you want to supplementary as a question, or just come back to it on debate?
Thank you. So, in terms of that and reading between the lines, it seems as if that nothing is off the table in terms of what could be explored with Basingstoke Live and how to move it forward. And you mentioned, to paraphrase, getting value for money. So can I infer from that that the issue of ticketing the event is still somewhere in the possibility of happening to Basingstoke Live?
Well, I think that's up to you to infer. I think what I've just said is that the future is something that needs to be, we need to engage with what this is going to be and develop a strategy for it. Now, as far as the event is concerned purely as a community event, then clearly a community event that has a sort of general feeling of probably that it's a zero-cost event. However, whether that's the right future for Basingstoke Live in total, or whether there is more to it, I think it's something that we should engage with, because it's clearly there is clearly a desire to have the Basingstoke Live event, but it's how best to get the best for the value for this council, how best to get the best value for Basingstoke and Dean, and how best to actually showcase the talent, which is what Basingstoke Live does. And it's putting those three together and how to bring this forward means that nothing, you're quite right, nothing's on or off the table, but I certainly wouldn't raise the immediate, this is a ticketing. It is not. It is about how best to develop this.
Is that another question?
Yeah, it's a generic one. How much did the specific soft market testing in relation to this paper cost, please? Sorry, just to clarify, this is the not the envelope.
You're right.
But the second
I couldn't find a cost in this paper either, although there was one in the other.
So there are two costs which are appropriate. One is £3,500 for legal advice, and another is 1.5k for external advice. Apart from that, there are no additional soft market testing costs for this particular project.
Councillor Still.
Thank you. I suppose I could put it into a question. On page 3 of 12, or 41 and 54, under the events, 4 events which are in the borough, under Firework Fiesta, it says rebranding and promoting the event as Basingstoke's Big Bang. Are you seriously considering calling it Basingstoke's Big Bang? Because I think that would be absolutely awful. But we've just got rid of Basingstoke Borough Donut City, so I wouldn't like to think we would be calling it Basingstoke's Big Bang. Just a personal thing, really.
I don't
You
think...
can answer this.
I'll answer it as a question. I don't think it is the place of the council to indicate the title of the event. And I'm sure that if somebody brought forward an event, it would be duly marketed in terms of what is an appropriate name for a particular event.
So who decided Basingstoke's Big Bang? I don't need names, but is it not the council?
I think what this is referencing backwards is a previous event. It's not about a current event, because obviously the fireworks one was cancelled this year, and that isn't part of the portfolio events for the future, as was discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
Just to clarify that last point, the 2014 event was called the Basingstoke Big Bang. Really? Now, my question is that when we went out to soft market testing, we grouped together a number of desperate events, and we asked the market who wants to come and quote for that basket. Now, they are desperate. Would we, I mean, the response we got was not overwhelming. Would we have got a better response if we'd broken that basket out? Because they are actually relatively niche events where different levels of management would be appropriate.
The soft market testing went out with a basket as a presentation of these are the current events, and really to look at, as it did, the appetite to develop that basis. It didn't prescribe them. It just said, this is what we currently do. Now, for a future, there are, I think what it is that we need to be looking at is what it is that we're trying to get from this type of event portfolio. And I don't think it is for us to prescribe what those events should be. We should be looking for people to give us their expertise to develop the particular structure, to develop the event that we're looking for. So where it went out, which was very simply to go out with that basket, rather than individual items in that basket, because I think that doesn't, the response would then be coloured depending on exactly, that's a good one, that's a bad one. It doesn't quite sit with what we're trying to do currently. There could be, if you were market testing an individual event, then we could do that. We could do that in the future. You don't have to do that. But I think this was very clear. It's to look at the overall portfolio, because what we're trying to get at is how to better generate the whole thing as opposed to just one individual event, and how to make that event better.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask on the core events, are we looking to do more core events in the future, and different ones as a council? Because I'll be honest, my concern over the years is that things drop off, things go, but we don't seem to replace some of the bigger items that we were doing years ago. And I just wonder where we see ourselves going as a council for some of the things that were happening in the park over a number of years. We seem to fall away, balloons over Basingstoke, things like that. Perhaps they weren't popular, but I believe it was. But that's a debate on that alone. But if we're dropping these things off, are we looking for other events? Because it actually pulls people into the town, and actually the residents enjoy them as well, because usually they're free in our town.
As for the future, first of all, as I sort of alluded to in the answer, there are two sides in this question, I think. First of all is the community side and community benefit, and clearly that is an area which it is appreciated, and it is an area that we are now looking at how we can better develop in terms of supporting and facilitating local organisations to develop community events. That's one side. The second side is, in terms of, if you like, is what you might call a more commercial side, and clearly the future also of linking the economic development of such an area such as the top of town and the Basingstoke Festival. That has a future as well, and recently the Night of the Dead proved to be very successful for the business people and seemed to be quite well regarded. So there are two tracks to this, really. One is that how do we develop and improve the community side of the events portfolio or events themselves, and secondly, how can we better leverage what we've got, which is a number of good creative organisations in the borough. There seems to be an appetite for that, but one thing I would say is that I don't regard it as being, if you like, the council's job to deliver. It's to facilitate, to use the resources we've got, whether that's space and marketplace, to encourage people to bring their commercial expertise to do the job, because that's where, on the commercial side, I think the real value is, because it's been proven already that if you can create footfall, you can create life, and that's the bit that the commercial side is. So I wanted to see how we can go on a two-track, and it is on something that is being developed and discussed currently, to ensure that we go forward and we don't just disappear and say it's easy to cut things off, but constantly we have to. And the nature of events, I think everybody would agree, is that it is a dynamic marketplace. It's changing, people's tastes change, you can't stick at the same thing. What was good 5 years ago is poor now, and we don't know where it's going to be in the future. And indeed, some of the ideas that have been put forward, purely as discussion points of how to develop and what an event could be, are, for me, quite sort of you'd look at them and think, well, how would that be an event? But actually, they are successful in other areas. So that's what we do see a future for events in this area, yes.
Thanks for that. Just on the community side, what my concern is, perhaps I haven't put it across, I understand what you're saying with the community. It always seems to me that when we talk about communities in this town, we talk about areas. I'm talking about Basingstoke town, which draws in people from the borough.
Yeah.
On the community side, and there's offshoots of that, which is commercial. And we seem to be falling away from that. That's the point I'm trying to make. And you've sort of separated it, your answer seems to separate them both out. Okay. I think one goes hand in hand sometimes.
I'm only separating them for the point of clarification, but in reality, they are one event. I think what you're trying to say is that there are two ways of looking at the same, it's two ways of measuring the same thing. And actually, I don't believe that the community can be a small community, it can be a community of interests that work together, or it can be the bigger community. There is no single, it's not a geographic, I'm not talking about it as if it's one geographical entity, it's how it spreads across the whole thing, and then how it can be valued.
I think that's it for questions. I haven't seen anybody else. So, discussion. If we could turn to page 36 and have the next steps open in front of us, that would be helpful. Before we get into those, is there anything anyone thinks we ought to capture as a comment in relation to what has happened since the Cabinet decision or the soft market testing? I mean, I didn't detect from the questions, but perhaps I was just wrong. So, Councillor Cousins, if there's anything you think we should capture on that before we can turn to the next.
Thank you, Chair. On page 38 of 54, conclusions 12.2, it says, taking these points into consideration, it is not considered appropriate for the Council to commission its existing events portfolio as a package through a competitive tender. May I recommend that we add to the end of as a package the words or individually, and that would encompass the views of the portfolio holder, where he stated that he would not, or where there doesn't seem to be a particular positive of individually putting them out to commercial tender.
I'd like to give the portfolio holder a chance to comment on that first.
12.2 reflects the soft market testing of the package, and therefore, in reality, it's appropriate for that particular comment to be in place as it is. Separating, as I said to you, that there is, I mean, I can be clear, there is no process currently for separating and tendering any separate entities within that portfolio.
But I'm not sure I'd want to make that a long-term commitment that we would never, ever consider, because the way I think bits of the festival might be worth outsourcing at some stage, getting expert advice on. Anyway. Councillor Cousins.
Yeah, this is where we differ. I think we would, but that's a point that I'm guessing is now up for debate.
Yes, Councillor Simon Batt, because you were in first anyway.
Thank you, Chair. All I wanted to say, and it's probably a mixture of those points, thinking about some of the questions that were being asked, I think going to 36 of 54 on 8.6, some of those points are particularly pertinent. Thinking about what the portfolio holder was saying, I think sometimes what's the most important thing to do is to be very clear about the objectives, whether that's something that we can articulate in words that describe something which is a community benefit, something which is financial, something which may well be about the profile or Basingstoke as a destination, whether that's a place to live, a place to attract leisure and retail visitors, whatever that may be. And I think that's something that I would absolutely agree on. When we start talking about events, well, somebody may come and say to Basingstoke Borough Council, I understand what your objectives are in these three areas. I want to run this event. Would you let us do that in the borough? And do you know what? At some point in the future, if it's very successful in 3 years' time, that they take one of our existing events as well, because it absolutely fits what they're doing, but maybe something that we don't have any line of sight on at the moment. And I think that's something that we absolutely need to be much clearer about, which is, what is it we are trying to achieve with our events? And let's not pretend there isn't already a financial cost. I get very frustrated when people talk about community events being free, when it is costing somebody something, and to understand who's visiting, whether that be visitors into the borough or people from the borough, to understand what the cost actually is, because events are very rarely free.
Councillor Gardner. Just stick on this point, the point that Councillor Cousins started first, which I assumed you were coming on, because we will come to other points in a minute, but I want to try and reach a conclusion on that first.
That was exactly what I was going to say, because I can't agree with Councillor Cousins. Certainly, as it stands, we've already tried to market the portfolio, and the response has not been great. So, as it stands, we will carry on with the existing events team. But there may well be events that we have, or events we are going to have in the future. We're actually marketing it as a commercial operation, and getting external contractors to bid for it would be a good idea. So I can't say that all future events have to be carried by the events team.
I was wondering whether I always like to capture something if we can, and if the portfolio holder and Councillor Cousins could both listen very carefully. I was wondering whether what we could say is that we endorse 12.2, and we also welcome the fact that there is no current intention to market, test, to commission any of the existing events separately through a competitive tender. That doesn't, which is what the portfolio holder said, I think, and so if that wasn't what you said, please correct me, but I was just thought we could welcome what you'd said.
Okay, that essentially is what I said. The one thing I think maybe to be very clear is that it's taking into account the other points, is that as it stands, there is no desire to do that. But there is, as it stands, says who knows where the future will be and when that future will be.
Hence my use of the word currently. But and I think that's as far as you can probably take it, if that's okay, because I don't think you can get a majority for a never. Okay, right.
I would accept that.
Okay, so back to the next steps, and I thought perhaps we might be helpful to go through them one at a time, and hopefully we get through. So, does anybody not agree that we should explore the possibility of synergies between the festival and the Top of the Town programme? I mean, it seems a self-evidently sensible thing to do, given that quite a bit of the festival took place in the top of town. So I think we can welcome that. Yeah, the exploration synergies. That brings us to Basingstoke Live, and I hope Councillor Cousins is encouraged with the fact that the word safeguard is twice in that paragraph, to emphasise the point.
I'd like it 7 times.
Well, yeah, and you did ask about, you asked in relation to a different bit of the paper, but about what, whilst ensuring the event is delivered in the most sustainable way, which is not saying that it has to be totally self-funding, but also reflects the fact that it can't be a bottomless pit either. So, and I take it that this is not only about it financially sustainable, but artistically, if I can use that word, sustainable. So, I mean, it's grown over the years, and you don't want it to start shrinking over the following years. So, but does anyone want to comment on, other than welcoming 8.3, is there anything else anyone wants to say about 8.3? We're welcoming 8.3. Then that brings us to 8.4. That's very good, yes. The Council should outline a plan for how it will enable the community to take greater control and responsibility over these types of events. This could build on work completed by the events team during the soft market testing exercise on the future delivery of the Council's events. Any comments on that particular bit of it? Yeah, you read Councillor Jones. It does come back to community, so do you want to comment?
Yeah, it sounds, to be honest, it sounds really good, but to me it's a bit hairy-fairy, if I was perfectly honest with you. The way I read it would be, oh, well, let's get someone in the community to run things, and we can walk a little bit away, but just put a little bit of money or a little bit of expertise in it. That's the concern I have, because I've seen it happen a few times already in this council, where we've had events long time ago, I must admit, and it was run by individuals in the town. They got to a point where they didn't want to do it anymore, and the thing fell flat. Whereas I honestly believe, if at the time, and I won't say what it is because I'll get moans, if it had been continued with more officer support, we might have still had it now.
Yeah, Councillor Gardner.
It's nice to agree with Councillor Jones. And I will. I think with these community events, rather than be passive and wait for the community to come to us, we should be proactive and talking to the community about the sort of events they would like to run and how we can help them. So I'd like to see that beefed up a bit.
Okay, that anticipates the very bottom of the page, 8.6. The second one is, the Council should enable residents and local organisations to develop the right skills so they can deliver great events. So, I mean, that picks up the point there. And, I mean, speaking to part of the debate rather than as chair, I mean, my experience of a number of these events is I'm pretty sure that anything, whether it was balloons or the other events that we've had in the past, there will have been individuals who were doing it because it was a passion and working with the council as professionals. And I think implicit in there is that balance is important. There's not, I think there's certainly a widespread view that, councils are not good at inventing these things. We don't sit down in a, closed room and think, oh, what sort of event should we do for the borough? But we should be actively looking for people out there with ideas who want to work with us. I think does everybody feel that? That's it. So we can capture that we're keen that we actively look for individuals with ideas that we can work with on developing community events. I should be watching whether the audience is shaking their heads to see whether I'm saying anything that would be but no, that would be unfair, so I won't. Yeah, Councillor Gardner.
Not just individuals, but organisations.
Yeah, individuals and organisations. Can I ask, in relation to 8.4, the Council should outline a plan? Does that mean literally a plan, and if so, when?
It doesn't mean a plan in terms of a calendar with a bunch of dates and times, and this is what it's going to be on that particular date. But we need to put together a strategy of how this is going to happen, and that's to me is what a plan means.
It will be proactive, which was the point we made. Right, so we endorse that. We're grateful that there's going to be some proactive work on this. Councillor Simon Bound.
all I want to do was also build on the organisational point that was made earlier, Mr. Chair, because of course we're talking about community organisations, and community organisations run these events for their own set of objectives, which often are the same as ours, as far as creating an event where they want to have a benefit for their community or for the wider community, often for a financial benefit as well. And of course we should make sure part of that strategy involves protecting some of the very successful events that are run currently by our community organisations. You know, there was great outcry about the Mayor's fireworks, but absolutely Hatch Warren deliver a great firework event for people who live within the town, as do many organisations out in the rural areas. And I think it's just looking at how we work with those. And there is, of course, a plethora of new events that are being organised, because there always seems to be another beer festival, another cider festival, another something else festival that seems to be happening and organised by community organisations as well.
Thank you for that. So, 8.5. To ensure the events service continues to deliver a successful and highly regarded programme in the most sustainable way again, the Council should ensure that all events are accompanied by a detailed long-term business plan. Presumably that means all events that we're funding, does it? Not all events in the borough?
It certainly it's for events that we're funding, and that if we are supporting those events both tacitly or actively, then also there should be a degree of planning which takes it beyond the short term.
Seems difficult to disagree with that, so we're okay with that. And I won't read 8.6 because I read it over, but I think that, again, further work has been done to maximise efficiency and achieve the optimal structure for the events team, subject to two principles which I, again, would find it hard to disagree with, but if anyone wants to comment on them, please feel free. So I think you've captured that. We've supported all of this. We put in the bit at the beginning about welcoming the fact that there were no current intention to commission these things individually. We've said a bit about what we mean about 8.4 as well. So I think that's it. Thank you. Yes, Dick.
If I can just make sort of a last comment. The reason why I've brought these papers forward is because they're a response to the commissioning and soft focus. The next phase of this development will be coming through the arts portfolio. So I just make sure that we can attract the right direction. That's where this bit then moves to.
Okay, so you're handing over the baton to Councillor Ossington. Fine, good. Okay, thank you. Thank you, officers. Now, we haven't finished because we've now got to look at the work plan, which is probably going to take a bit more discussion than it normally does. But we'll give people a chance to move away. Thank you, audience. Those are the events team, by the way, if anyone didn't recognise who was sitting on the two of the events teams. Right. So I've turned to page 52 and our draft committee work plan, and talk you through how I see it at the moment. So when we last met, we had further discussion on mental health support down for this meeting, but the work programme suggestion form, for which I'm very grateful to Councillors Loney and Cousins for producing, I think it would have been a bit of a rush to try and get something in for this meeting, and also there is work going on nationally that is due to report in January, and which officers will have analysed by March. So what I'm proposing is two things. One, we definitely timetable this for March, and two, that we get together probably a one-meeting scoping group just to sit down with the officers who will be doing the work in, I was originally going to say early January, but having done some research on dates, it's probably going to be mid-January, just to make sure that what we want to come back in March, is what the officers think they're trying to deliver in March, and also to discuss whether there are any outside people we want to invite, because I think I was told that the CCGs have indicated they would be willing to attend if we wanted them, and somebody else, and I forget who that was, but yes, Councillor Loney.
Could I just suggest as well that we actually have somebody from our benefits department comes to talk to us when the whole thing is done. The reason I say that is I think that the benefits system is certainly going to affect those with mental health issues. And I'm quite concerned that we can guarantee that we will ensure those people understand the changes. Maybe it's not ours, maybe it's their CPN's or whoever's responsibility. But I think it's quite important that at some stage these people are made fully aware what those changes mean to them, because it would be so easy for them not to recognise they've now got to pay more of their monies as opposed to the council paying it, and therefore they're at risk of their housing, and that obviously is something none of us here would want to happen. So I think it would be really fortunate if we could have somebody from our own benefits department or housing department, either one, who can explain to us how the benefits will affect those with mental health. Please, thank you.
Okay,
Chair.
can I suggest that we will see, when we can have a scoping group meeting, we will see whether someone from benefits can come to that. But I wouldn't want to delay the meeting for that, but we will certainly make sure we invite them for the March meeting, if that's okay. Now, who would like to come to this scoping group meeting just to talk out exactly what we're doing? Yes, hopefully both Councillors Loney and Cousins and Councillors Goldington too. So, and Simon Bound. Anyone else want to? That, I mean, that's a very full. That's enough. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just not trying to roll anybody else out, but I'm not trying to plead for anybody else. We had a little bit of, I don't know if you got diaries with you, but we were wondering whether Monday the 18th might be a feasible date for it. I don't know. We'll come back to us on that. I've only got 2 other meetings that evening, so it would be squeezed. So we're talking about 6 o'clock. But if you could come back very quickly if that's not convenient, because I don't want it to drag on to the end of January, because then it'll be too late to really get it organised for March. So, okay, thank you for that. So that's that. Now, on January, we have the feedback report on the LIF, the renewal of the waste contract, public space protection orders, which are a new power, and to some extent they pick up existing things called DPPOs, and there's also something to do with dog control orders in there, but decisions have to be made before our March meeting. So if we want to have any briefing on it or any say in it, we need to do that in January. And then if you read today's media release, you will know that we're being given the opportunity of discussing the leisure park regeneration in January before it goes to Cabinet. So that makes for a very full meeting, but I think that we had a very long discussion on the LIF last time, and I'm hoping that we mightn't need such a long discussion this time, but if people know I'm going to be wrong about that, it would be good to know sooner rather than later. And public space protection orders, I don't think are going to be contentious probably, though I saw a hand waving which suggests maybe there's more to them than I know about. But if we don't want to miss the boat, we need them in, and then we could concentrate mostly on the renewal of the waste contract and the leisure park regeneration, both of which have decisions coming up in the following Cabinet meeting. So Councillor Cousins. Councillor Cousins was first.
Thank you, Chair. It was purely, could a copy of the public space protection orders be sent to EPH simply because of the impact on homelessness that it has, please?
Yes, yes. Whatever, we will get a presentation, I think, so we'll send them. We can send the presentation after we've had it. Yeah, okay. Councillor Loney.
Thank you. I think you've probably answered the question. I just wanted a fuller understanding of what that meant, but if we're going to get the papers, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's the purpose of putting it on the agenda is that we can be told what it is and how it differs from what there is at the moment. Councillor Band.
Just to pile on a little bit more pressure, Mr. Chair, my concerns about, we've currently got the feasibility study for the youth hub on items to be timetable, and I think my memory serves me right that some of the other recommendations that we generally supported were waiting for this feasibility work, and I'm sort of concerned about the timing of some of the other recommendations if they're not going to appear until March, because there was all of the sort of support around other more senior youth workers to support the work in the community, etc., which we generally all agreed with in this committee, but this was the one piece of the jigsaw that we needed more information, and I am quite concerned about the timing of the other things slipping when we're potentially talking about funding issues which will impact in April next year, and potentially we won't end up talking about the last piece of the jigsaw until March.
I'm sorry, Councillor Austin's no longer here, but I think I'm correct in saying that the other things are, to the extent that they involve expenditure, are in the draft budget for next year, which we'll be discussing as full council in February. So they are the money is there. I did check. Whereas this was a proposal, I think, more for capital expenditure, which doesn't have the same annual process. So I think it's a good concern to raise, but I don't think it's in practice a problem, because I think the other things, to the extent that you need a budget in order to do them, are already in there.
In that case, I'm more than happy.
So are we okay? We will try and do all those 4 in January? Good. Okay. So it won't be a shorter meeting as tonight, but we'll do our best. And then that leaves the current 3 items to be timetabled, still to be timetabled, and the management of leisure facilities beyond 2018 will be coming back in March, though obviously some of that, the bits of it that relate to the leisure centre may have changed from what was before, but the rest of it still needs to go ahead, so I think that's right. I don't think I've missed anything. Okay, well, thank you very much. That was seasonably good behaviour. I'm afraid I can't offer you drinks like the mayor, but I'm sure there's some seasonal food left outside. So.